All right, so welcome everybody. This is our second session. This is Empowering Every Learner, UDL and Accessibility with Anthology Ally. And today's session is more on enhancing course accessibility in Blackboard. So we have Katie and I are doing this presentation today. So I'm Dr. Amy Lomolini. I am the Director of Accessibility here at Anthology. And in a past life, I was also an instructional designer. I was QM peer reviewer, Quality Matters. I was on that, what is the accessibility and usability resources site? So I was the face of alt text for quite a while. If you've seen that. And here at Anthology, I work with our product teams and I work really across the organization, just bringing awareness and action to all things accessibility. Katie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Katie Grinnell. I'm an accessibility strategist here at Anthology. So really what that means is I work primarily with Ally, and I partner with institutions and organizations across the globe on really helping to push the needle, so to speak, as far as the Ally adoption goes. But also really just to kind of strategize at large of how to incorporate Ally and accessibility more organically into all facets of the institution, and really to help really again make sure that accessibility is central, right, and that we focus on that for all of the right reasons. So I'm happy to be here again. Dr. Amy will be leading the show, and I'll be coming in towards the end, but I'll keep an eye on the chat. So feel free to ask any questions.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, go ahead.
One reason why I wanted to join in is for the first time, I'll be teaching a IJED 110 class with how do I say it, with Spanish learners, and I believe I have an interpreter who will be joining me in the course shell remotely. I have to double check on that. I hope so. But is there anything inherent in Blackboard for learners that speak other languages? Am I able to translate text within the course shell and post it, or am I able to maybe speak text in English and translate it to Spanish?
Yeah, Katie, you want to talk about Ally?
Absolutely. Happy. I was chomping at the bit here, but nobody could see me. So I am happy to share that we have what are called the alternative formats. So that's one of the core features of Ally. And one of those formats is translated versions. So essentially, if you upload any of your content, that can be downloaded as a translated version, right? So if you have your syllabus, guidelines, PDF, what have you, and you want that in a different language, you have the ability to do that. And of course, we offer Spanish. And then that's similar for WYSIWYG content. And WYSIWYG that's what you're building directly into your course in Blackboard, right? So like a document that you're building, a module, things like that. So you can absolutely do that to help with that. And then additionally, some of the other alternative formats that are available also have text to speech, Microsoft Immersive Reader. I believe you can change the language for that. That's another alternative format. So we'll be focusing, I think, on that the next time we meet, which is next week. But I'm happy to share any resources that might be helpful.
Sure. And is Ally an AI assistant to Blackboard, or?
It is, so it's its own tool. Ally is its own digital accessibility tool. It's embedded directly in Blackboard.
Okay.
So it's really for digital accessibility. It helps instructors point out and kind of identify any accessibility issues in their content and how to address them. But then it also offers those alternative formats, and those are available to both students and instructors. And then for administrators, it offers, a more like holistic insights into their data to see, where are there different areas that, they can maybe improve in terms of, really just increasing those overall accessibility scores.
Okay. Well, that'd be great. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll sit and listen to more of Ally's capabilities and where to find it in Blackboard and all that good stuff when I review the notes.
Yes,
offline. Thank you so much.
absolutely. Of course. And I'll put some links in the chat for you, but
Okay.
only when you're not driving.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
And I'm
fair
sure
enough.
Kayla can give those out, after the meeting as well. So yeah, please feel free. This whole training, this whole series is all about you all. So feel free to ask us any questions. Anybody who just joined, put it in the chat, or you can come on mic and ask any questions along the way. So getting started with today's session. Oh, we have just a little recap of our series of what is happening. So the Foundations of Accessibility and UDL was last week. Kayla, do you have those recorded somewhere that folks can access?
Yes, it's on our YouTube page called the Center for the Advancement of Learning. So the recording from last week is already uploaded onto our YouTube.
Perfect. All right. And then today's is all about enhancing course accessibility in Blackboard. And then the next one next week will be the instructor's guide to accessibility. So catch up on the ones you've missed and feel free, join us for the ones that you are able to. So today we're going to identify practical ways of applying UDL to your course using Blackboard. And then we're going to associate components of the UDL guidelines to Anthology Ally. And I'm going to stop and I'm going to talk to, the instructional designers on the call, the faculty as well, to kind of get your ideas and we can brainstorm and workshop this together. So one of the things before we jump right into multiple means of action and expression is there's generally two ways of thinking through course design. And I'm curious what your process is. So a lot of times we can start fresh. Maybe it's a course you've never taught before, course you've never designed before, you have a blank slate and you can totally build it from the ground up. But a lot of times that's not really practical. Maybe you've been teaching for ages, right? You already have most of your content, you have most of your shell already developed, and you need to focus in on a way to update the course content, but you're not starting over from scratch. But I'm curious, what is the instructional design process? Is it faculty design their own courses? Instructional designers help? What does that look like?
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
Well, I can tell you when I worked with Professor Aguiar and Julian, when we got our the IJED 110 course online certified, we used a course map, and
yeah,
even though we had taught the class offline, right, there were slightly different considerations, especially when we condensed it to a 6-week version online and the semester version online in terms of constructing or reconstructing the course shell for online accessibility. So, there were some learning curves, and now, of course, we find ourselves in a situation of looking for areas to kind of reconfigure. Maybe we're going to upload new text. Maybe there's some things we can do differently in terms of the format, kind of tweak it a bit, within the guidelines already set and already cemented within the course that we already had verified. So we can't change.
right.
We wouldn't change the course, but certain
Right.
elements, within the course, different texts,
Exactly.
videos, and the like. So
great. Okay. Yeah. So, what we're going to go over today is we're kind of going to walk through each of the 3 principles of universal design for learning, and we're going to look at different ways that we can use Blackboard to make some updates. So if you have a new course, you could think of doing these from the start. But if, like in your case, if it's not necessarily a new course, this isn't a checklist, right? This isn't something that you have to sit here and tick every box. But what I would suggest for, looking at a course that's already relatively built and you're looking to do some tweaks, I would say first identify, there's a great book by Thomas Tobin and Kirsten Bailing called Reach Everyone, Teach Everyone, UDL in Higher Ed. And I always refer to that book. One of the things they talk about is pinch points. So you can't boil an ocean, right? You can't change your entire course and you may not have much time, right? So right now, pick something that is an area where students struggle. Maybe it's an area where they're not performing as well on the assessment as you would like, or where there's confusion and they ask you all these questions, right? So somewhere that's impactful, and start there to implement one of these strategies, right? You don't have to do all of it all the time. So start small, progress over perfection. So as we go through each of these different the principles and kind of the different strategies here, don't think that you have to do it all tomorrow, right? Really find what would be impactful for your learners and start there. So we're going to start with multiple means of action and expression, which is different ways to demonstrate for learners to demonstrate their knowledge. So one of the principles or one of the guidelines is strategy development. So I think in Blackboard, and these images are largely going to be Ultra. So if you're not quite in Ultra yet, they may not look as familiar, but the principles and the strategies really are the same. So you want to think about how you're organizing your information. When students get into your course, do they know where to go first? Do they know where to go next, right? Or is it you expect them to jump onto the assignments and then go to the discussions, but maybe they don't know that, right? So really using Blackboard's module structure can help organize your content, organize it by units, organize it by weeks, whatever makes the most sense for you. Once you move into Ultra, we do have AI generated modules. So you can put in your syllabus, for example, and it will generate modules for you. There's different sliders and things for complexity, number of modules, language. It can add in images. So it can really kind of give you that boost to get started. If you're not in Ultra or not with the AI yet, then you can certainly do that as well by manually. So one of the things you want to think about is, do you have a consistent structure within your modules? So for example, in the courses that I teach, I like to have a document or a page that starts off and it would list my objectives. It would have any assigned readings. I really like to tie together my content with stories. So, whatever course you're going to teach, whether it's English, whether it's nursing, whether it's anatomy, whatever it might be, students can generally Google all the information. They can go buy the textbook without having to come to your class, but they come to your class because you have the expertise. You have the real world application, the stories behind this. You can make sense of the content as a whole. And so I think we often forget that piece as we're designing, and that's so important. A course or a learning management system, a module, shouldn't be just a brain dump, right? It should have those connections, just like you would tell that story if you were in person in front of your students. You would bring them through a story. You would say, we're going to watch this video, and then we're going to talk about this reading, and you would bring them with you on that journey. So finding ways to do that online is really important as well. And so when it comes to like what Katie was talking about, using that WYSIWYG, which stands for what you see is what you get. It's like where you edit right on the page inside the LMS. Using that, then you'll also be able to have the alternative formats that we were just talking about. And then other things I have on that one page would be like maybe an overview of the assessments. I want my students to know what's coming. It's not a surprise. I want them to understand what comes next and how I'm going to be determining whether or not they've met those learning objectives. So using a document to kind of set that. Usually next in my modules, I would have a discussion and some sort of an assessment. And, that varies, right? Some weeks, maybe you don't have an assessment, an assignment, or maybe you don't have a discussion. But either way, keeping that consistent structure, and perhaps the IDs in the room can also help with sort of a template or a model for you to go off of, where it has that structure kind of set up for you and you plug and play the different pieces to the puzzle so that when I go into your class, it's the same as when I go into someone else's class. And the content, of course, is different, but that structure remains similar. So it's a consistent experience. Just like when they walk into classroom A and when they walk into classroom B, they generally are set up with the board at the front, the chairs facing the board, and so on and so forth. So that predictability is really helpful and something that you can do very well with Blackboard. Moving on to interaction. So the next thing, as you're either designing a course or you're reimagining a piece of your course, is thinking about how students interact with the content, how they interact with each other, and how they interact with you. So thinking, instructional designers, I know you know this, backwards design is something where we start thinking about the goal. What do you want your students to accomplish, and how can they show that? So in English, you might need to have papers, but not everything is necessarily about that. you might be able to offer them varied means of expressing themselves, such as, maybe they do a presentation and they write a reflection. Maybe it's a journal. Maybe it's, you could have any number of things. Maybe it's a poem. Maybe it's a, musical expression of some sort. So thinking about what is the actual important part of this, and then how can we kind of vary the ways. Not everybody is great at presentations, and not everybody is great at papers. So by giving students different kinds of ways to show and demonstrate, they can play to their own strengths, or maybe learn something new and kind of go out of their comfort zone a little bit. So when you're thinking through, again, once you have Ultra and you have the AI, we do have the AI design assistant, which can help you create assignments based on different levels of objectives. So based on things like understand or apply, right? And everywhere in between, depending on where you are with your students. If it's a 101 course, maybe on the lower end. If it's, a graduate level course, you might want to have more complexity. What I love about the AI design assistant is it gives me ideas. So I don't take anything, even from AI, at face value. I use it for ideas and brainstorming. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. And then I go on and build it using my expertise, my storytelling, and where I come from to build into that. So you want to think about different ways to build in formative and summative assessments. So what that means is maybe you're introducing a lot of new terms in your, anatomy class. Maybe you have a quick quiz that just reinforces whether that or not they've learned those terms. It doesn't have to be worth a lot of points. It doesn't have to be a scary, anxiety-filled type of assessment. You can make it 0 points. You can make it, very little points. You can give them unlimited attempts. The point is that they're learning it, not necessarily that they get it right on the first time. So those are called formative assessments, where it's like a check-in so that they know how they're doing, and also you get that understanding of how they're doing as well. And then summative assessments are, okay, now we've built this up and we're going to move, and actually assess their learning. Thanks. Katie just posted the link to the book I was talking about. Much appreciated. There we go. So I'm curious to hear from either the instructional designers, the faculty in the room. What are some ways that you've designed different interactions in your courses? What does that look like? Thanks, Julian. You got this.
No, we were just kind of having this conversation today. Just multiple means of interaction, allowing students to interact with the content and interact with their peers in different settings, whether that is through a discussion board, allowing students to either write their responses or create videos. We were speaking that not all students like to type their answers. More are oral learners, they're oral presenters, and you want to cater to that style for them. Also, just having a lot of kind of what you mentioned with the formative, but a lot of low stakes assignments, things that aren't anxiety filled, but allow you to practice the skill, kind of refine that skill so that by the end of the module, you can demonstrate that mastery.
Perfect. I love that.
Right. And piggybacking off of what Julian said, I really like using the new knowledge check or relatively new knowledge check function to map onto questions that will come in later quizzes or exams. So I like to use it to as a low stakes way to see if students are learning what they'll eventually need to learn for a higher stakes exam.
Yeah, that knowledge check is great. That's built into the document of Blackboard. And what's really cool about it is you get to see where they're at too, and you can intervene as needed. You can see what's going on. And
I'll be right there. I'll be right there.
Oops. He'll be right there. All right, excellent. So thinking through those ways that you can, vary it and make, allow students to shine, right? At the end of the day, you want them to demonstrate the knowledge. How they do it is not always as important. All right. Oh, there we go. Expression and communication. So this is exactly what Julian said. He was reading my slides beforehand. He's going to give this presentation next. So encouraging students to use that multimedia for communication. But also, you can use discussions for so much more. So discussions can also be a place to share projects. So have them share a rough draft with each other and look at each other's projects. It also builds confidence in what they're doing. Are you on the right track, right? It lets me as a student kind of check in with my peers and yeah, okay, I did something similar. I think we're headed in the right direction with this. And to give each other feedback that can then be incorporated into that summative assessment or the final draft of the project. You can also have them brainstorm ideas. So working together, just like in person, you might have small group discussions where they figure out what the topic for their paper is going to be, or figure out what their thesis statement should look like. And really helping each other is a more approachable manner. Sometimes, thinking about different cultures or just different personalities too. People aren't always as comfortable with the instructor giving all the feedback, but when you hear it from a peer or when you see a peer doing something similar, you can really relate to that. All right, any other strategies that you want to mention for action and expression? So if you currently have a class, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kit. So you come up.
Yeah, I was just going to say also not just, I mean, I don't know if action and expression is also about the ideas expressed, but giving students multiple ways of like multiple choice in topics, etc. That's just one of the things that I do on assignments when possible is if they can choose the topic or choose what they're going to do. I guess that's the next one, interests and identities. Yes, that helps them to take an onus over their own learning. And I really love doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So people have different ways of, different things that interest them. For me, I AI generated this unicorn and I use it all the time because I love it. It's a unicorn with sunglasses and some tattoos and a computer in front of them that says A11Y, which is A and then 11 letters in accessibility and then the Y. So, right, like finding what people like and what they enjoy. So if you have to have them write a research paper, and maybe you have certain topics they have to stick with, but allowing them to be able to choose which one means they'll write about something that they're passionate about, right? Having them explore a topic that they are really interested in gives them that autonomy. It makes it authentic to them. It makes it relevant to them. So finding different ways to do that is definitely a great idea. Kit was right on point. And then we have sustaining effort and persistence, right? So a big part of engagement, they want to know that you're there. Like I said, they can Google the topic, but they're learning from you and they are looking to you as the expert, as the instructor. And so Blackboard has some great rubric capabilities where you can use that rubric built into an assignment and you can set your expectations. So make sure you're on the same page. What exactly are you looking at? What are you, trying to get them to accomplish? Is there page requirements? Is there, understanding, like how do they demonstrate that? What does that really look like? So using rubrics is a great way to provide that relevant and constructive feedback. And also the benefit for you all is that it streamlines grading and makes that grading process so much more efficient and saves you time. So if you've already kind of laid out your expectations in a rubric, then you can, be able to grade that much quicker. Your comments are kind of already there. You can, of course, provide overall comments and you can provide feedback on each criteria as well. So I really love to use the rubrics. I think it helps me a lot stay organized, stay fair, right, and grade really quickly, but still providing that feedback and making sure that I'm helping students to sustain their effort and persistence. And another thing, once you get into Ultra, you will be able to AI generate those rubrics as well. And again, you go in, the human is always in control. So you go in and you tweak it, but it gives you a great starting place to think about. And then how you communicate with students really matters as well. So you want to use different means of communication to engage them. So within Blackboard, there's direct messages. You can set up announcements. You can have reminders within the content. And also, I think something that gets lost is the how-tos. So you can use, I would suggest putting in, how do I submit a discussion, or how do I submit an assignment, especially as you're moving into Ultra and students are less familiar. Providing some how-tos, you can link out to our help site or your own help information. Also, if you're using another tool, so if you're using a different website, a textbook, or anything that's incorporated in to the learning management system, really communicating with students, how do I use this? What does this look like? Give them that information so they can study at 3 a.m. when they're up and they're not, messaging you, how do I do this, professor? Right? So making sure that you're finding the different ways to stay and to show that there's a human behind this screen of an online course is really essential as well.
I like that. I'm sorry, I'm back.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
No,
Go ahead.
I like that idea. I find that when I teach asynchronous classes, that I have to insert myself in physically through a WebEx link to provide updates. Because some students don't read the announcements. Sometimes they don't read them in time. And so I look for different ways to allow them to realize that there is a presence within the course shell, just to keep them on point. Now, yes, it is hard making videos every week, but if there's a way for AI to help out, that would be great. So I like what I just heard.
Yeah, and so I wonder if you could create like module overview videos that maybe persist so that you could
okay.
reuse them. Don't say things like, Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, right? Because you may not teach that module at that time.
That's right.
So find ways to create videos that are more, time agnostic at least, and just stick to the point. That doesn't mean that's the only communication, but if you've sort of pre-planned that, and if you have those to reuse from semester to semester, that's a lot of, work that you've already done. And you can do it per semester. So if this semester you make 3, maybe it's the 3 most important parts of your course, right? I'm making the number 3 up, but maybe there's 3 projects that are really important and you give them an overview video of those projects. That persists till next semester, and next semester you make 3 more videos that are the introductory module and this module and that one. Now you have 6, right? So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Save what you have and reuse it as much as possible throughout the semesters, and build from there. I'm seeing some things flying in the chat. Yeah, Katie says she has a discussion board that runs consistently during the semester to ask each other questions. I do that as well. And what's great is you can help develop a community where students are answering each other's questions. And sometimes they're able to find like, yeah, I know that that's due on Tuesday, or, whatever the date is, and answer each other and build that camaraderie. Yeah, so moving on to multiple means of representation. So offering content in different formats. So there we go. So we want to think about different ways. So Ultra has a really great content designer now, where you can make your documents much more engaging. And you can create well-structured documents. You can have, like we talked about earlier, those objectives, content with your rationale, and you can add your own flair to connect the dots. So here we have a document that the images are, it's like a 2-column design. You have images throughout. So think about if that was, a diagram that you needed to show that reinforced what the written content means, right? That gives students different ways of thinking about the information. So they can, look at the text, they can read the text, they can also see what that means by looking at the image of whatever it is that you're talking about. So really kind of making it memorable for them. And you can leverage the AI design assistant in combination with the new content designer and really create these kinds of pages really quickly. So this will definitely help spruce up your pages and your documents in a great way. So this has been really helpful. You can also add videos. So this is an image of Video Studio, which is Blackboard's native video creation tool. But if your school has something different, if you have Panopto or any of the other solutions, using videos like we were just talking about can really help provide that instructor presence. But I like to use videos not to reiterate something that's already been said. I like to use videos to tell a story, right? To like if I have an assignment that's coming up, instead of reiterating and reading the instructions, which are already listed in like 7 other places, because you're right, students don't always read, but I want to tell the story about why that's important. So I have, a project where students create a unit of accessible instruction. I tell a story about why that's important. I tell a story about a student, I go through it, and then I'm like, and this is why you're doing this project. And that helps make it real. And it also is something, to your point, it is something that can persist through semesters. So whenever you're using a video tool, you want to make sure that you edit the auto-generated captions and transcripts. Most tools at this point allow you to edit, so you just want to make sure that you're editing those. They have gotten so much better at being accurate, but of course we say weird words that AI may not know yet. So and those weird words are generally the most important ones. So something that's jargon in your field is what is going to be misspelled by auto-generated captions, and that's like the whole point and what you want your students to remember. So make sure you do go in. Students really use captions and transcripts. It's not just for someone who's deaf or hard of hearing. They use captions and transcripts to focus. A lot of students use them to take notes. You can use them to review important information. I know in a course that I was taking, I was using the transcripts, and I was also using AI to help me like remember and summarize. And one of them came up with a mnemonic, is that how you say that? Device, and remember it in different ways. So I was really able to use that transcript, even though I'm not deaf or hard of hearing. So using videos is another good way to make your content, kind of refocus your content and give your students another way to perceive the information that you're teaching. Images as well. So adding images can really bring your content to life. It can also reinforce those important concepts. So you can add images from Unsplash, which is right there in Blackboard. And you can also use AI within Blackboard to generate new images. And then you can use the alt text that comes over from Unsplash, or you can use Ally, and Ally will also suggest alternative text. So alternative text, just for anybody who's not familiar, if I'm using a screen reader, so an assistive technology that reads the screen to me, it can't automatically read images. So it will say image, and that's not particularly helpful. So instead, what we would do then is add alt text, and then the screen reader can read that alt text. And when you're adding alt text, you want to make sure that it is contextually appropriate. So an image of, I'm going to go with Dr. Seuss because I have a 5-year-old, in an English class might be totally different than it would be in a history class, right? You might be thinking about different concepts as you're talking about this. So kind of making sure that that alternative text speaks to the purpose of the image, why it's there, is really important. But Unsplash and Ally will give you that place to get started. So I'm curious to learn from you all, what does your pages or your documents within Blackboard, what do those look like? What do you have currently? Do you use videos, images?
All of the above.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Kit.
that's okay, Professor Wright. I design out courses every day. I'm curious to hear what you have.
Oh, well, I either have my own instructional videos or introduction videos at the beginning of the course, in the middle of the course, and towards the end, or I will upload, videos from YouTube and other places. I mean, nothing too creative. But if it helps with the assignment, then I'll upload a video to assist the module. So if one of our modules are talking about is college worth it, and they're doing an essay assignment, they're listening to a Simon Sinek video, they are responding to a homework task, or even writing a paper, right? Or doing a project like they did for this spring, where they are interviewing people and creating a slide presentation and then talking about the people they interviewed, about the worthiness of college, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I'll have videos attached. But if there's a more creative way I could do that, then I'm definitely interested.
No, I love that. That sounds very creative. One of the things that might be interesting is in Blackboard, there's an AI, or Ultra, there's an AI conversation where it explicitly tells them that it's AI, but they can actually have a conversation with a persona that you've set up. So you could set someone up to be, Dr. Hates College, right? And have it be a total cynic. And then you could have another conversation where it's set up that they're totally for it. They could have conversations, they can interview right there. Of course, it's still good to interview, real humans as well, but it would even be interesting to compare what is AI saying versus what is a human saying. And that also alleviates, sometimes it's a little bit challenging for people to either go in person to meet somebody to interview or find somebody who's willing to be interviewed. So AI can help mitigate some of those just, logistical nightmares. But comparing the two, living in the world that we live in today, that's life. So that might be an interesting way to go about it as well. Kit, you were going to say something before? You're muted if you're talking.
I'm sorry, were you talking
Nope.
to me or?
No, Kit.
Oh yeah, there was someone else who was
Yeah, Kit was about to say
gonna say
something.
something. Okay, I'll be
I'm so
quiet.
sorry. I have two screens, and it was a struggle to get my mouse back over onto this screen. And I'm not even doing anything else. It just was a struggle. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I actually am really in love with the HTML now feature in Blackboard. To like integrate Padlets and integrate other kinds of things that could be directly embedded on the page. I really like that. I do worry about it in terms of accessibility when it comes to having, for example, we have Read Speaker now, and having it doesn't really read the HTML the way I would want it, but maybe I think that's just because I don't know how to really do it yet. But I really do. I love having the fact that you can have text right next to the video in this next iteration instead of just this linear thing, this more like web page design sort of feature of Blackboard. I really love that now. I think it makes the experience so much better for students. So it doesn't look so kind of boring. Now it looks very, very interesting.
Absolutely, right? So on the screen here, we have that 2-column design on a document with 2 images. You could have one of those be a video. And I think that goes to the important point that's often forgotten of that connecting the dots, right? Of that telling the story. Imagine if you walked into an in-person class and you pushed play on the projector and it played a video and you left. Nobody does that, or I hope nobody does that. Some people probably do that. But no, nobody in this room would do that. So, right, you would not do that, right? What you would do is you would be there and you'd be talking about the video. You'd set the stage before you play the video. You would talk it through. You'd ask them questions after. And now you can do that online as well. So you can, have that video, but also have the why next to it, right in line with the context. So I like to keep it all on one document instead of multiple, where it's like one page is a video and then the next page is a PowerPoint slide and the next page is this. Having it kind of separate like that, you lose the flow and you lose that opportunity to tell the why and the connecting of the dots. So I think that's a great point, Kit. Awesome. All right, I am going to go back now. I just went back to show that picture. All right, I am going to throw it over to Katie to talk to us about how Ally aligns with Universal Design for Learning.
Thank you, Amy. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right. So I know we have a couple new folks here today from our first session last week. But what I wanted to do is just briefly kind of recap the core functionality of Ally's alternative formats. So the alternative formats are the only student-facing feature that Ally provides. Now that doesn't mean that, the work that an instructor or an instructional designer or administrator does to, make accessibility via Ally, more of a goal or a focus, right? It doesn't mean there's not some type of impact on students, but as far as an actual direct feature that students would be interacting with, this is it. And I shouldn't minimize that because it's a beautiful and powerful feature. And so what happens here is that Ally will automatically generate, I should say, alternative formats of either instructor uploaded, right? So your files, your PDFs, PowerPoints, things like that, or WYSIWYG, right? That what you see is what you get, that content that you're created directly in Blackboard. So Ally will automatically generate alternative formats of that content so that students essentially have the ability to choose which version that they would like to engage with, or perhaps which version they need, right? In terms of any type of disability or impairment that really does require a different approach to how they're engaging with their course content. So essentially what a student or even an instructor would be looking for, because instructors have access to this as well, is there is, it's kind of a short and wide A, if you will. And then to the right of it, there's an arrow pointing down. And so when you see that, that's the alternative format icon. When you see that, you can select it and you're brought to a menu similar to what we see here on the screen. So what you'll always see is essentially the name of the selected file, right? So in this instance, we have a Van Gogh bio. This is a Word document. And based on that selected file, there are all of the different versions of alternative formats that are available. So in this instance, a tagged PDF, HTML, EPUB, so that's essentially a digital publishing file that you open with an e-reader, like a Nook or a Kindle, electronic Braille, audio versions, Beeline Reader, Microsoft Immersive Reader, and translated versions. And so lots of different options that we have here, again, really to suit not only the needs or the preferences of the individual student, but also the type of device that they're on, perhaps the learning environment that they're in. It might require that they, they're not able to listen to something. Maybe they forgot their headphones, right? So they want to see something and perhaps they're on their phone. So what's going to be the best alternative format for utilizing their phone? HTML, without a doubt, right? It is responsive to screen size. It's a much cleaner experience and it doesn't need any further zooming and pinching. So these are really kind of, this is the gist of what the alternative formats feature is. And again, this is available to students and instructors. But as far as how this relates back to universal design for learning, what we see here really are it's the autonomy, it's the choice, it's the flexibility. So students have all of these different options of how to engage with their course content. There's no limit to how many alternative formats they can download. There is no limit to only students that have a disability or only students that have an official accommodation. Every single student has access to these. So again, it's really about that autonomy, which again, and I think I shared this last time we met, as I have multiple disabilities myself, there isn't often autonomy in those lived experiences. And so I think in and of itself, that is extremely important when we're thinking about how we're looking to break down some of those barriers. But then from a learning perspective, it's just expanding access, right? It is getting more involvement. It's increasing engagement. Hopefully our learners are able to see themselves back in how they're engaging with their content. It resonates with them, it speaks to them. And it really is supporting all of these different learner needs and preferences, abilities, and then of course, devices. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Amy. Thank you. So this is a helpful table that I wanted to share, and I can put the link. This is really just coming from our support site for Ally, but we thought this would be helpful in terms of trying to kind of demonstrate different use cases for different needs. And so this is a format table that is really looking at the different types of alternative formats that we offer. And so those are kind of listed up at the top. You'll see electronic Braille, audio, immersive reader, and so on. And that's going across the top horizontally. And then going down, we have starting with your needs. It will have adjust text, font, and background color, adjust audio playback speed, commuting. So all of these different scenarios and use cases. And then essentially you will have a blue dot in the actual column that would make sense for that particular need. And so a great example would be for this first need would be adjust text, font, and background color. What would be helpful for that is the immersive reader. The immersive reader, if you haven't seen it, is a really strong reading and learning comprehension tool that is designed to help strengthen, the different components of different parts of speech and understand, get a better sense of grammar and understand, be able to differentiate between verbs and nouns and adverbs and things like that. But it also, similar to an e-reader, has the ability to customize the experience. So the student can adjust the text the font. Sometimes you can adjust the spacing between lines. You can focus on one line at a time. So again, it doesn't do anything to the actual content itself. It's just expanding the way that a student can actually interact with it in a way that suits their needs. And if you go on down a little further, another really good example, and I think this is helpful along the lines of universal design, this third example that says commuting. So thinking of our students that spend a lot of time commuting, and perhaps they're on, public transportation. So they could download an audio version of some of their content, and they can listen to that, while they're waiting, right? And they're on the bus or the train. Similar with immersive reader or a PDF or the OCR PDF. Again, all of these different use cases. So if you're having a hard time understanding, or trying to, I should say, think of a tangible example of a use case that a student who isn't disabled might want to consider using the alternative formats, this is a great place to begin, and can be really helpful. And I myself have found that as an instructor, I think having these conversations is really helpful for students as well. So typically what I do in my courses is I have a little tutorial that I record on how to use the alternative formats and some of the benefits. And then I talk through some use cases of them. I kind of even it out. So for specific types of disabilities or impairments, I'll talk through some of the specific formats that would be conducive, and then also kind of, larger universal design. So a lot of it goes back to commuting for, students that, might have, tired, chronic pain in their eyes because they're staring at the computer so long. The Beeline reader is a great example of an alternative format to help with that because it applies different color gradients to the text, and it's intended to kind of reduce eye strain. And that might be, not necessarily due to any specific type of impairment. It's just the way the world is, today, where we spend a lot of time staring at our computer screens. So I hope this is helpful and helps to connect a lot of what Amy was talking about in terms of really bringing things full circle, making sure we're connecting those dots. And this is just another way that Ally can kind of support that larger pedagogical goal or structure. So I'm happy to continue here and just kind of go through some of those support and resources. And I believe I did this last week as well, and I'll do it again next week, mostly because I think of accessibility similar to parenting, where it takes a village, right? And I think it's important to continue to emphasize all of the wonderful resources that are available to you. And so starting with the Ally user group, this is a community of global Ally users. So essentially this is run by Ally users. It's not run by Anthology necessarily. And so there is an online forum, and you can provide, or you can ask questions of other users and look for feedback and suggestions and things like that. It's very active. And then there are also, I think it's bi-monthly meetings. So lots of different ways to get involved there. It's a really active group. You can go to the next slide, please. This is our help site. So it is help.blackboard.com/ally. So I apologize for not adding that there. But essentially, this is open to anybody. There's help, a lot of how-tos, instructional support for students, instructors, and administrators. You can also sign up to follow the release notes if that's something that you're interested in hearing more about. And then we also have something called the Communication and Adoption Toolkit, which I think will be particularly helpful for our faculty, our instructional designers that are on the call. We're actually doing a makeover of this, if you will. So this really is a collection of resources that is designed to help administrators and instructors really, I would say, push the needle in terms of how they're using Ally and increase their efforts, increase their adoption of Ally. So it has different types of guides. It has survey questions that you can use, email templates, and we're really kind of beefing that up as well. So more good things to come on that. Next slide, please. Thank you. We also have Ally office hours, and this is actually something led by our Ally product manager and others from the Ally team. Essentially, every 2 months, we have a 1-hour session where we'll do a bit of a, let's talk about some of the latest releases or ally developments, things, that are happening at the time. But this is really a Q&A with the team. And our director of product, his name is Chris Alden, is fantastic. He answers your questions live. You can also submit questions ahead of time. Anybody can join this. It does not matter what your role is. So if you're really just interested in learning more about certain aspects of Ally, we would love to have you. Next slide, please. And we also have something called the Anthology Community. So this is a collaborative platform of different global anthology users, and it has a lot of different components to it. So there are discussion forums that are kind of focused on specific topics. So there is one specifically for accessibility. We have different user groups. There is a blog. We have a lot of blog posts on Ally and accessibility in general. And that's something that we're actively, working on a regular basis. And then we also have what's called the Member Idea Exchange. And I do believe that is on the next slide. So Amy, if you could just skip ahead. Yep, thank you. So the Member Idea Exchange, this is essentially like a virtual suggestion box. So if you have suggestions, feature requests, things like that, that are specific to Ally or any other anthology product, of course, Blackboard that you have, this is where you can go and you can essentially make those suggestions. Our product team reads this regularly, and we do what we can to incorporate that into our conversations around our roadmap. So again, it doesn't matter what your role is. If you have a suggestion or you have something you would love to see and some feedback for us, we definitely want to hear it. So please, when you have time, we'd love to have those ideas exchanged with us. And I think that is it for today. With 5 minutes to spare, I'm happy to open things up, and if there's any specific questions that anybody has, I can turn my camera on so you can see that I am a real human. But happy to keep the conversation going. If there's anything else that anybody wanted to talk through, we're here to help with that.
Yeah, it's been great chatting with you. You all were a lively bunch. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, yeah, go ahead, Kit.
I was just going to say thank you all for telling us more about the Ally and how and strategies for incorporating UDL into our courses. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Don't be strangers. Keep in touch. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. So our next session is next week on, I have to look back at the slide, Tuesday, May 13th at 3 o'clock. So please join us then.
Yes, thank you so much, you guys. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye, everyone.
you. Have a
Take
good